My name is Tom. I'm going to tell you all about the recent NSA leaks, piggybacking off of the beautiful history Sarah just gave. I don't have a PowerPoint, unfortunately, but I did create a timeline sheet. So hopefully you've picked those up on your way in. You can follow along. I'm not going to touch everything on that timeline, but I wanted to give you a more comprehensive overview of a lot of the programs you might not have heard about so much, such as some of the GCHQ revelations which have come out of the Snowden leaks. So like Molly said in the beginning, I'm going to talk about three major things. I'm going to go over the major programs that we've discovered since the Snowden disclosures have happened, which really start to show the staggering surveillance capabilities of the NSA and the US government right now. I'm also going to go over some statements that officials in the government have made regarding surveillance, specifically things that James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, has said regarding surveillance, and talk a little bit about how the documents that have been released prove that his statements are misleading or at times blatant lies. And then I'm going to round it out talking about some of the more recent things on the timeline, which get to the crackdown on journalism that's happening as a result of people reporting in an adversarial fashion on the leaks that Snowden made. So we're going to start with March 2013. This is months before any of the leaks happened. And in the Where in the World is Snowden, he's actually just beginning his job in Hawaii with Booz Allen Hamilton at this point. But Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, appears before the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is the congressional body responsible for intelligence oversight. And he's asked by Senator Wyden, Democrat from Oregon, quote, "Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?" And James Clapper's response is, "No, sir." And then he changes it a little bit and he says, "Not wittingly." So move ahead to June 1st. Glenn Greenwald, Laura Poitras, Ewan McCaskill all board a plane for Hong Kong. June 5th, we have the first leak come out. Glenn Greenwald publishes an article in The Guardian detailing the mass surveillance from Verizon records of millions of Verizon users. And what this talks about is the metadata. So something that we probably didn't know before but has recently come into our vernacular. Metadata is call location, both phone numbers, call duration, and then the ID that's within your phone. This revelation is crucial because the FISA court that granted the record, which Sarah talked about, says, quote, "The continued production on an ongoing daily basis thereafter for the duration of this order is what the rate of collection is, and that's from the period of April 25th through July 19th, approximately 3 months. Later, we learn that these sort of orders have been unfolding continuously with all major telecom companies in the United States since May 2006. This is a really critical event because this is the first evidence that the NSA under Obama is collecting information in bulk and indiscriminately. And like the William Binney clip illustrates, this was something that was clear under Stellar Wind and something that senior Department of Justice officials, as well as the standing replacement for John Ashcroft, stood up and said, "We will resign if these programs aren't abandoned and defunded." So it's the first evidence of that under Obama. It's something that really clarifies a warning that Senator Wyden and also Senator Udall have been making for years, which is that the Obama administration and the NSA has been using secret legal interpretations to justify surveillance. And these go back to the FISA court. And specifically within that, the so-called business records provision of the Patriot Act, which is 50 USC section 1861, that allows any tangible thing in connection to an ongoing and authorized investigation to be collected. Also, recent reporting by Jennifer Granick, who works in Stanford, has said that there's no precedent for the primary order in this case. And this is something that was actually released yesterday. She argues that because there's no precedent, it's illegal. The FISA court does not monitor compliance with the limitations that they impose at all. So it's a court that doesn't monitor and is sort of incapable of enforcing any rulings that it makes. And she says this is endemic to virtually all NSA surveillance programs. So moving on, June 6th, the second leak that comes out, Glenn Greenwald publishes an article in The Guardian, and Barton Gellman and Laura Poitras publish an article in the Washington Post revealing Prism, which is another program that we all are very familiar with now, program that collects metadata from internet corporations. And specifically, it collects the metadata from 7 large American internet corporations through their back doors, directly from the companies themselves. This is important because it begins to illustrate what Sarah was saying, the collusion between the US government, surveillance, and large American internet corporations, which historically dates back to 2007, as some of those Prism slides show, with Microsoft being the first company to get on board with Prism. The businesses involved have all denied this. They all deny that there has been a backdoor, but that's because it will hurt their business, because people won't trust them anymore. The law behind it is the FAA, which was passed in 2008 and reauthorized in 2012, and it authorizes the bulk collection of data where at least one party is foreign, and this has been interpreted in various ways, and like Sarah said, is not really applicable anymore because so many communications between 2 domestic partners are recorded. The one main check that the FAA sort of posits is that to obtain information from the telecom companies, the NSA has to get that information through court orders. But what's happening is, because of these backdoors which are programmed in, the NSA doesn't have to obtain warrants through court orders. They get the information directly from the companies themselves. On June 7th, there's another leak. The Guardian reports that GCHQ, which is the British counterpart for the NSA, has been similarly gathering information from the Prism program, which is interesting because the GCHQ is based in the UK, there are a number of different hurdles to go through to collect information from, which is mostly stored by American internet companies. But because GCHQ is working with the NSA, which is using Prism, they're able to sort of like circumvent those legal authorizations. Obama defends the NSA on June 7th, saying you can't have 100% security and also then have 100% privacy and 0 inconvenience. And he welcomes debate. June 8th, another leak reveals Boundless Informant, which is a tool used by the NSA in order to categorize and count the amount of metadata that is obtained and stored through other programs like Prism. This creates a physical map of surveillance around the world, and they actually measure it by sort of like a heat index, where green is close to 0 and red is a lot of surveillance. And the US comes up on this map as sort of a mustardy orange. Which which tells you clearly we are under domestic surveillance. And Boundless Informant says, it tells us that in the period from February to March 2013, close to 3 billion pieces of intelligence have been collected from US computers, which right off the bat proves that the NSA and the intelligence community has been lying when they've claimed that there are no metrics for the amount of, for the number of Americans who are under surveillance, because there are close to 3 billion pieces of intelligence coming from someone. The Guardian and the Washington Post on June 8th published an additional Prism slide, which reveals the existence of a program called Upstream, which is to be used in tandem with Prism, and which actually taps into the fiber optic cables that carry the internet under the oceans and connect the different continents. So that's another important revelation. June 9th, Snowden reveals his identity as a whistleblower. And I'm not going to talk too much about Snowden himself, but on June 17th, he does a Q&A with Glenn Greenwald and answers some questions through Twitter. And he recalls the moment where he decides to blow the whistle. And he thinks back to that moment in March, among other moments where James Clapper was in front of the Senate. And he says, quote, "I imagine everyone's experience is different," talking about whistleblowing. "But for me, there was no single moment. It was seeing a continuing litany of lies from senior officials to Congress, and therefore the American people, and the realization that Congress, specifically the Gang of Eight, wholly supported the lies. That compelled me to act. Seeing someone in the position of James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, baldly lying to the public without repercussion is the evidence of a subverted democracy. The consent of the governed is not consent if it is not informed." So there's one more main program that came out in Snowden's leaks, and I'm basically going to skip the whole month of July here because that's where the back and forth chase goes. But that program is Xkeyscore. Xkeyscore is a set of sort of back databases, servers, software that has a user interface, and it allows analysts to search queries among all the metadata that is being stored among many different databases. This gives unprecedented capabilities to access email communications, search histories, chats, and it can all be done essentially in real time. To access Xkeyscore, all you have to do is fill in a little pop-up form on your computer, and you choose a justification from a pull-down menu, and it'll say, you know, foreigner, or you know, some currently being monitored terrorists, or you know, things like this. There's no judicial oversight, and rarely is there even any NSA oversight. So rarely is a superior even watching this. But in an interview Snowden did with Greenwald, he says, quote, "It's very rare to be questioned on our searches. And even when we are, it's usually along the lines of, let's bulk up the justification." So that really shows you the kind of culture that is monitoring or auditing this intelligence gathering. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Let's see here. On August 13th, Snowden does a brief interview with the New York Times, and they ask him, quote, "Why did you seek out Laura and Glenn?" And his answer is, "After 9/11, many of the most important news outlets in America abdicated their role as a check to power. Laura and Glenn are among the few who reported fearlessly on controversial topics through this period." So that sentence sort of serves as a precursor to telling us why he chose to get in contact with them. And the New York Times reporter was curious, like, why didn't you call the New York Times up with your leaks? I like that, but yeah. August 18th, just a few days ago, Glenn Greenwald's partner, David Miranda, is detained at Heathrow Airport in London. He's denied a lawyer, and he's questioned under a British law called Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act of 2000, and he's kept for the maximum that you can be detained under that law, which is 9 hours. All of his electronic devices are taken from him, and among the questions he's asked are for the encryption codes, so that they can unlock his devices, and he doesn't have them, and he tells them that over and over and over again. Just a quick update to that: they won the Miranda case, won in the High Court in London, so that Glenn Greenwald doesn't have to turn over any of the encryption keys for those devices. But if contained in those devices are somehow documents that pose a national security threat, then they still have to turn them over. So it's a moderate victory. And the last thing I have here is August 20th. The Guardian reveals that under threat of legal action, it destroyed computers and hardware suspected of containing leaked files from Edward Snowden. That was a report from a few days ago, but legal officials from the UK were threatening to take equipment from The Guardian if they didn't destroy it. So The Guardian and some of the UK officials went into the basement and they smashed the hard drives, and then they took angle grinders to them and they ground them into pieces. There's actually video footage of it if you want to watch. It's kind of fun. So thanks. That pretty much brings us up to the present. And there's other things that I didn't have time to cover, but please check the timelines, and yeah.